So as you see how pretty our neckline turned out, and we still have our armholes to do, but that part's pretty simple. Now you have to decide which side you want your opening for your zipper to be. So this is going to be my opening. So this is the side I'm going to close up. So now I'm going to go ahead and close up my armholes on both sides. And when I close my armhole up, I'm going to sew up the right side because the left side is going to be my opening. Now to do the armhole, I like to do something a little untraditional. So I'm going to take the opening side, and you're going to take them and you're going to fold them inside of each other like this. Just like that. Just as if you were going to go ahead and close them up. You're going to hold on to that, and you're going to take one side and you're going to flip it over so that you can grab what you just pinned. And you're going to start at that seam. It's going to look a little tricky. But you're going to start at that seam. You're going to put both of those seams together. You're going to pin it. And then you're going to stitch one side of the armhole together. So go ahead and stitch one side of the armhole together. Now that you've got the one side stitched together, go ahead and trim off your excess of what you just sewed only up till where you started. And then you're going to stop. Okay. Now you're going to turn that side, and as you'll see, one side of the sleeve or the armhole is done. So now you're going to do the same thing on the other side. You're going to flip it, and now you can see where you cut the other side, and this is where you started. Now you're going to join the two together, and you're going to sew the other side of the armhole. Now I'll repeat the clipping where I left off here. Now I'm going to clip on the other side. And now you'll turn it. And when you turn it, now you have the armhole finished on both sides. And most patterns will tell you to sew up until the seam here, leave the shoulder open, sew them together, hand stitch the cloak. I ain't got time for that. Now before I press the armhole, I'm going to close up the side that is not going to have the zipper. So I press all that at one time. So this is my side that is not going to have the zipper. So see, if I were to put it together like that, there's the armhole, and here's the bottom half. I'm going to line up my side seams, and I'm going to pin them in place. And I'm going to do one long stitch that'll cover the liner as well as the outside. And we're going to sew one long stitch to connect. This is the armhole, the under part of the arm. We're going to do the front and the back. Now we're going to turn it, and then as you see, you have the front, and then you have this side, which is going to be the part that's closed, and then you have this side, which is going to be the opening where you're going to put the zipper. So now I'm going to go and press everything down. You can do a understitch under the sleeve if you like. In my case, I don't normally do them under my sleeve because nobody really sees that. The neckline is really where it looks really attractive. So I'm just going to press my armholes, and I'm going to press this side seam. We're going to go back to the mannequin and get ready to attach the skirt. So now our bodice is finished. Here's our armhole, and you can see the back of the bodice. Of course, it needs pressing. And this is our opening side that we're going to put the zipper in. Now is where you want to attach your skirt. Let's connect the skirt. Now before you connect the skirt, you want to check your waist measurement, because we know now this is your total waist at the bottom of your bodice. So now you want to measure the waist across, because that's what you want to match it with your skirt. So if remember, my waist was a 34. So I'm going to measure and see how much I got. I think I made mine a little bit bigger, which this is where you would do the alteration to make it smaller if you need be. And as you see, mine is measuring a 41. So if I wanted a 34, that means that I've got 7 inches too much. So that means I've got to take 7 inches off this waist. You could go in here and you could take up each of the darts on each side, make your side seam a little bit bigger or a little bit wider, and then add more darts in the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to take up my 7 inches. And to take up my 7 inches, I'm going to go, because I'm kind of a sway in the back, so I'm going to take about a 1/2 inch on each side of my backs. So that's going to give me about an inch. That'll give me 2 inches there. So now I'm down to 5. And when I get to the side seam, instead of doing a 5/8 side seam, I'm going to do a 1/8 side seam. So that'll give me 2 more there and 2 more on the other side. So that gives me 6. So I'm going to go ahead and take this up, and then I'll come back and we'll measure. I've made the alterations to my bodice. Instead of having a 5/8 inch seam allowance, now I have a 1 5/8. And on the back, I added an extra 1/2 inch to the darts. So by adding that extra 1/2 inch, now we're going to see what my measurements are. So I'm going to measure, but when I measure from the end, remember I'm going to have 1 5/8. So I'm going to pull my measuring tape back here, because that's going to give me my seam allowance. So if you move my finger back, here's a 5/8, move it back 1, that's going to give me a 36. So I can live with a 36 because that's going to give me 2 inches of play, and it'll be nice and loose. Now that we have that done, you want to lay your bodice out on the right side, and I have the right side laid out. So now I'm going to take the right side of my skirt. And remember, I only cut one side open, so there's only going to be one seam, and that's on the side seam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up, and you're going to take that one side, and now you're going to pin right sides together. I'm starting on one side, and I am not pulling or tugging. I'm making sure that everything is even, because you want that waistline to be nice and smooth. You don't want any gathers or any wrinkles or any puckers. And the good thing about this is if there's more fabric than you have on your, if I cut my waist too big on my skirt, the good thing about it is I can just cut that excess off the skirt and keep it going. That's what I love about the circle skirt. It is so alterationable. The wonderful thing about sewing for yourself, it doesn't have to be perfect and match up. And I see that my outside doesn't match up exact, so I'm just going to trim this little extra off, which is fine. And as you see, I'm off just a little bit. See, I have a little bit left. What I'm going to do, because I don't want to cut mine, I'm going to just ease just a little bit. I'm just easing a little bit of the fabric all the way back around, but I'm just trying to even it out. So now that gets us connected. So to sew this skirt, I'm going to sew the bodice to the skirt using the skirt side, because the skirt has a rounded edge. So you want to make sure that you're keeping it round as you sew. So I'm doing a 5/8. Now since I have this little bit left, I'm just going to go ahead and just cut that little bit off the outside of my skirt before I close it up for my zipper. Okay, now the bodice is connected to the skirt. So what I want to do this time is I'm going to fold it, turn it on the right side, the outside rather, with right sides together. And I'm going to match up the side seams, and I'm going to measure for my zipper. Now everybody's zipper is differently. I'm a little on the hippier side, so if you're hippier, you want to have a deeper zipper so that you can get in your dress a lot easier. So I know that the bottom of my hem is perfect, so I'm starting from the bottom of the hem, and I'm pinning so that that all stays nice and straight. And then when I get to the top, and as you see, everything matches. The bodice matches, the seams match here. So I'm going to measure, and I have a measuring tape right here on my machine. I want to measure 8 inches down from the waist. So this is where I'm going to start to sew my side seam where the zipper would stop. And I went ahead and serged my inside seam so everything looks nice and neat. Serged the side seam of the skirt. So now we're ready to put the zipper in. And since this is my front here, I'm going to be putting the zipper in the back. So if you can check out my video on how to insert the zipper. There's our plantation dress bodice. It's attached to the circle skirt. And of course, you know, I've got to add my sash. So let me show you how I make my sash. To make my sash, I've just cut a piece of fabric that's about 9 inches wide. And I made it the whole width of my fabric, since my fabric was 68 inches wide. So I just cut one 9-inch strip. And I'm just going to simply fold it in half. and there's no real science to it. Of course, I like my points. I'm going to start at a point, just anywhere at the point, and I'm sewing straight across till I get about a 5/8, and then I stop and turn. And now I just simply sew a 5/8 inch seam. Now I'm about at the halfway mark, so when I get to the halfway mark, I'll back stitch, take my needle out, and then I'll move forward about 2 inches, and then I'll pick up and finish it off, because that'll give me room to open and turn my sash. As I get closer to the end, I'll stop. And this is where I want to make sure my angles are the same. So I'll bring my fabric over and kind of line up where I started and I stopped. And it lets me know that that's about where I started, right about here. Back up a little bit. Because see, when you put it side by side, this is about where I need to be, right there. And then I'm going to turn and then go off to the corner. I'm going to trim off all the excess of the sash that I don't need. Now that I've got the sash all done, I'm going to find that opening that I had, which was about halfway, which is about right here. And this is my opening, so this is where I'm going to turn it. And of course, I'm going to use my fast turning tubes, and if you haven't seen me use these, you got to check out my video. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it with these, and then we'll finish up the sash. So here's the pressed sash, and here's that little opening. I'm just going to take a piece of fusible web or stitch rich thread, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of times what I like to do is just cut it in half. Because you don't need a wide piece, you just need a narrow piece. So I've got that cut in half. And I'm going to just take it and lay it on the actual seam right here inside. And then I'm going to press that down. And what that's going to do is going to glue that hole in place, and you'll never be able to find it. That eliminates having to sew that together with the needle and thread. To finish up the hem, I'm going to use the roll stitch. You can check out my video on how to do that, but I thought I would show you guys again because this is a thicker fabric than what I had on the other video. The other video was chiffon. This is more of a cotton blend. So I'm going to show you that it still can do the same effects. I always like to start at a seam, and I like to roll the seam down first and get my roll started on that seam. So I'm starting on the seam. Once I get it past the seam and get it past the fold, now I'm threading it up inside of the little loop. And I like to turn my machine this way because it makes it easier to thread it. And once I do that, I just start threading it and see the beautiful results that you get. A very nice rolled edge hem. So that's just how simple it is to do that rolled edge. And of course, when you're done, you want to press this flat because it will curl. And now that I'm back to the beginning, this is where I roll it. And I take the presser foot up, leaving the needle down, and I just simply stitch right on top and run right back and meet where I stopped. So our plantation dress is won. It's finished. You've watched me construct it. So let's put it on the mannequin with the accessories and let's see what it looks like.